My brother-in-law banned my best friend from Thanksgiving dinner and demanded I sign over the deed to my lake house to his mistress. And when I refused, he attacked me until I was bleeding on the floor. I am writing this with shaking hands from a hospital bed, listening to the terrified breaths of my husband, who just watched his brother try to kill his unborn son over a piece of paper. For 5 years, I was the perfect, silent wife who used her inheritance to bail this ungrateful family out of debt just to keep the peace. But 48 hours ago, that silence was shattered along with my grandmother's porcelain and my faith in humanity. Now, my brother-in-law is sitting in a jail cell charged with felonies, and my mother-in-law is rallying the entire town against me, claiming I am a cold-hearted monster who chose money over family blood. She says I provoked him. She says a good sister-in-law would have just signed the check and kept her mouth shut. I feel like I am going insane because part of me actually feels guilty for protecting myself. Can money really turn family into predators? Or was I sleeping next to a viper's nest this whole time? Everyone is telling me to drop the charges for the sake of the baby. But I am terrified that if I let him out, next time, I will not be so lucky. Please, I need someone to tell me the truth. Am I the villain for destroying my husband's family? Or was I the victim all along? My name is Serenity Vance. I am 36 years old, a former interior designer who once curated lobbies for Manhattan's fiercest law firms. And currently, I am the heavily pregnant, exhausted owner of a sprawling lakefront estate in northern Vermont. To the outside world, specifically the members of the Burlington Country Club and the pristine moms at the local yoga studio, I am living the American dream. I have a devoted husband named Mark, a baby boy due in 7 weeks, and a bank account that allows me to buy organic strawberries in the dead of winter without looking at the price tag. But names can be deceptive. My name is Serenity, yet for the past 5 years, my life has been anything but serene. It has been a carefully constructed performance, a high-wire act where I balance my husband's fragile ego on one side and his family's insatiable greed on the other. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of our living room, pressing a hand against the small of my aching back. The view was breathtaking. Lake Champlain stretched out like a sheet of hammered steel under the gray November sky. Snow was beginning to fall, dusting the manicured lawn and the private dock in a layer of white silence. It was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. The house smelled of cinnamon, roasted pecans, and lemon polish. Every surface gleamed. I had spent the last week scrubbing, organizing, and preparing to host 10 people for the holiday dinner. The baby kicked hard against my ribs, a sharp reminder that I should be resting. My doctor had warned me about stress. She had told me to keep my blood pressure down. But how could I rest when perfection was the only armor I had? I adjusted the cashmere throw on the sofa, smoothing out a non-existent wrinkle. I told myself this year would be different. Mark had promised me. He had sworn that his younger brother, Kevin, would be on his best behavior. He promised that we would have a nice, civilized family dinner. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored the knot tightening in my stomach. A car engine roared up the driveway, shattering the silence. It was not the smooth hum of Mark's sedan. It was the aggressive, rattling growl of a rental car being pushed too hard. My heart sank. Kevin was not supposed to be here until tomorrow. I watched through the glass as a black Dodge Charger skidded to a halt on the gravel, narrowly missing my prized hydrangea bushes. The door flew open, and Kevin stepped out. At 34, Kevin looked like a faded copy of my husband. He had the same jawline, but his eyes were different. Mark's eyes were soft, sometimes too soft. Kevin's eyes were restless, constantly darting around, assessing the value of things, calculating what he could take. He did not have luggage. He just had a duffel bag and a look of entitlement that he wore like a second skin. I walked to the heavy oak front door, taking a deep breath to compose my face into the mask of the welcoming sister-in-law. Smile. I told myself, do not be the difficult one. Do not give them a reason to call you uptight. I opened the door just as Kevin was reaching for the handle. A gust of freezing wind rushed in with him. "Hey, Serenity," he said, brushing past me without a hello or a hug. He stomped his muddy boots onto the travertine tiles of the foyer. "Whoa, it is freezing out there. Why is it so cold in here? Are you trying to save money on heating or something?" I looked down at the clumps of mud melting on the stone floor I had just polished. "Hello, Kevin," I said, my voice steady. "Practiced. You are early. We were not expecting you until Wednesday." Kevin dropped his duffel bag right in the middle of the hallway, creating an immediate tripping hazard. He shrugged, peeling off his jacket and tossing it onto the entry bench rather than hanging it up. "Plans changed," he said vaguely. "Plus, I figured you could use the help. You know, with you being Haoling, Tuhash is greater than huge." He gestured at my stomach with a grimace, as if my pregnancy was a grotesque inconvenience rather than a miracle. I forced a tight smile. "That is very thoughtful of you. Kevin, Mark is still at the office in town. He will be home in a few hours." Kevin did not answer. He was already walking toward the living room, his boots leaving wet, dirty prints on the hardwood. I followed him, waddling slightly, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "Do not say it," my inner voice hissed. "Do not tell him to take off his shoes. If you say it, he will accuse you of caring more about your floors than family. He will tell Mark you made him feel unwelcome within 5 minutes." Inside the living room, Kevin threw himself onto the white linen sofa. The cushions groaned under his weight. He put his feet up on the coffee table, the antique mahogany table I had spent months restoring. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning the vaulted ceilings, the crystal chandelier, and the expensive art on the walls. It was not admiration in his eyes. It was a mixture of hunger and resentment. "Must be nice," Kevin muttered, loud enough for me to hear. "Excuse me?" I asked, moving to the kitchen island to put some distance between us. "Nothing," he said, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "Just saying, Mark really hit the jackpot. Did he not? Big house, fancy view. It is crazy to think we grew up in the same bedroom, and now he is living like a king while I am scraping by." I filled a glass with water, my hand trembling slightly. It was the same old narrative. In Kevin's mind, Mark had been lucky, and he had been unlucky. He conveniently forgot that Mark worked 80-hour weeks for a decade, while Kevin hopped from one failed get-rich-quick scheme to another. He forgot that the down payment for this house came from my inheritance from my grandmother, not just Mark's salary. "Can I get you something to drink, Kevin?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "You got any beer? Not the craft crap Mark drinks. Real beer. We have Heineken," I said. Kevin scoffed. "Figures. Yeah, whatever. Bring me one." I walked to the fridge. "Bring me one." "Not please. Not could you?" I was 7 months pregnant. My ankles were swollen to the size of grapefruits, and my brother-in-law was ordering me around like a waitress in my own home. Just give him the beer. I thought, keep the peace. For Mark, for the baby, I brought the bottle to him. He snatched it without looking at me, twisting the cap off and letting it fall onto the rug. So, Kevin took a long swig, belching softly. Who is coming to this thing on Thursday? Just the usual suspects? Mostly, I said, picking up the bottle cap from the floor and putting it in my pocket. Your mother, your Aunt Linda, and Uncle Bob, and Sarah is coming. Of course, she is bringing her famous pecan pie. The air in the room shifted instantly. Kevin froze the bottle halfway to his mouth. He lowered it slowly, turning his head to look at me. His eyes were cold, devoid of the sloppy casualness from a moment ago. Sarah? He repeated. My ex-wife Sarah? Yes, I said, feeling a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the open door. She has come every year for the past 10 years. Kevin, she is part of the family. Kevin let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a cruel sound. Yeah, about that, he said, sitting up straighter. We need to talk. I brought a guest with me. She is waiting in the car. I wanted to check the vibe before I brought her in. A guest? I asked, confused. You brought someone? Her name is Tiffany, Kevin said, a smirk playing on his lips. And she is my girlfriend. So, obviously, Sarah cannot be here. I stared at him, unable to process the audacity. You brought a stranger to our house for Thanksgiving without asking. And now you want me to uninvite Sarah? Sarah, who helped me paint the nursery. Sarah, who is practically a sister to me. It is not a request. Serenity, Kevin said, his voice dropping an octave. He stood up, towering over me. It is a boundary. If Sarah comes, Tiffany and I leave. And if we leave, Mom is going to be devastated. You do not want to ruin Mom's holiday, do you? Not when she has been looking forward to seeing me all year. He took a step closer, invading my personal space. I could smell stale tobacco and cheap cologne on him. Besides, he whispered, leaning in, Sarah has been saying some pretty nasty things about you around town. I did not want to tell you, because you are so howling. 2# is greater than sensitive right now with the hormones. But if you knew what she really thought of you, you would not want her here either. I looked into his eyes, searching for the lie, but he was good. He was so incredibly good at planting the seed of doubt. My hand went instinctively to my stomach to protect the baby. The peace of the lake house evaporated, replaced by a suffocating tension. The invasion had begun. I retreated to the sanctuary of my kitchen, the only room in the house where I felt a semblance of control. The kitchen was massive, a chef-grade masterpiece with marble countertops that cost more than my first car. I began chopping carrots for the mirepoix with a violent precision. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound of the knife hitting the heavy wooden block was the only thing keeping me from screaming. Kevin did not stay in the living room. Like a bad smell, he drifted into the kitchen, leaning his hip against the island counter. He reached into the ceramic bowl of grapes I had just washed and popped one into his mouth, chewing loudly with his mouth open. So, Kevin said, his voice muffled by the fruit, what is the verdict? Are you going to call Sarah? Or do I need to go tell Tiffany to drive us back to the city? Because, honestly, Tiffany is not the patient type. She is sitting in that freezing car right now, waiting for me to give the green light. I stopped chopping. I gripped the handle of the knife until my knuckles turned white. I did not look at him. I stared at the bright orange discs of carrots scattered across the board. Kevin, I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. You cannot ask me to uninvite Sarah 2 days before Thanksgiving. She has no other family. She has been part of this tradition since before you, and she were even married. It is cruel. Cruel? Kevin scoffed. He walked around the island, encroaching on my workspace. Let me tell you what is cruel. Serenity. Cruel is listening to your so-called best friend trash you behind your back while eating your food and drinking your wine. I finally looked up. Kevin was smiling, but it was a sad, pitying smile that made my skin crawl. What are you talking about? I asked. Kevin Seahill, acting as if he was burdened by a terrible secret he was forced to share. Look, I did not want to say this. I really did not. But last month, I ran into Sarah at a bar downtown. She had a few drinks in her. She was laughing with some of her girlfriends. Talking about you? He paused for dramatic effect. I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. I knew I should not listen. I knew Kevin was a liar. But the insecurity inside me, the part of me that always worried I was too boring, too uptight, too desperate to be liked, opened the door just a crack. What did she say? I whispered. She said she feels sorry for Mark. Kevin said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She said Mark is trapped in a golden cage. She called you. So Yu Jing Haling. 2 hash is greater than what was the word? A checkbook. She said the only reason you have any friends is because you pay for everything. She said you are trying to buy a personality with your inheritance because you do not actually have one. The words hit me like a physical slap. The air left my lungs. It was a specific, targeted strike at my deepest fear. I had always worried that people only tolerated me because of the lake house, the boat, and the lavish parties I threw. That is a lie. I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Sarah would never say that. Believe what you want. Kevin shrugged, popping another grape into his mouth. But ask yourself this. When was the last time Sarah paid for dinner? When was the last time she did anything for you that did not involve her gaining something? I am just looking out for you. Serenity. You are family. She is just an ex-wife who is bitter that she lost the access to the family money. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. Was it true? Sarah had been struggling financially since the divorce. I always paid for lunch. I always bought the expensive gifts. Was I just a resource to her? Kevin saw my hesitation and pressed his advantage. If she comes here on Thursday, she is going to be laughing at you the whole time. He said softly, and Tiffany? Tiffany is real. She is blunt, sure, but she is honest. She wants to be part of this family. Sarah is the past. Do you really want to choose a backstabbing ex over your husband's own brother? I felt the walls closing in. My desire to be the perfect hostess was warring with my hurt pride. If Sarah really thought that about me, I did not want her in my house. I did not want anyone in my house who thought I was just a checkbook. I reached for my phone on the counter. My thumb hovered over Sarah's contact name. Just text her. Kevin urged. Tell her something came up. Tell her the plumbing burst. Tell her you are sick. It does not matter. Just get it done so I can bring my girlfriend inside. I tapped the message icon. I began to type. Hi, Sarah. I am so sorry, but Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, or Jing Hao Da Yu. The sound of the garage door opening rumbled through the floorboards. Mark was home. I put the phone down, suddenly feeling guilty, like a child caught stealing candy. The heavy door from the garage swung open, and Mark walked in. He looked exhausted. His tie was loosened. His suit jacket was slung over his arm, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Hey, honey, Mark said. offering me a tired smile. Then he saw Kevin. His face lit up with genuine surprise and warmth. "Kev, you made it. I thought you were coming tomorrow." Kevin immediately transformed. The menacing manipulator vanished, replaced by the jovial younger brother. He rushed over and gave Mark a bear hug, clapping him on the back. "Surprise," Kevin laughed. "I wanted to beat the traffic. Plus, I missed my big bro." Mark laughed, hugging him back. "It warmed my heart to see you." I watched them from the island. This was the dynamic. Mark, the protector, always so happy to see the brother he felt guilty for leaving behind. Kevin, the parasite, feeding off that guilt. After they broke the hug, Mark walked over to me and kissed me on the cheek. "How are you feeling?" Mark asked, his hand resting briefly on my stomach. "I am fine," I said, my voice tight. "But we have a problem." Mark's smile faded. He looked from me to Kevin. "What is it?" "Kevin wants me to uninvite Sarah," I said, cutting straight to the chase. "He brought a girlfriend. She is waiting in the car. He says if Sarah comes, they will leave." Mark rubbed his face with his hands, letting out a long, weary sigh. He looked at Kevin. "You brought a girl?" Mark asked. "Who is she?" "Her name is Tiffany," Kevin said, putting on his best innocent face. "She is great." "Mark, you will love her. And look, I know it is last minute, but it is awkward to have my ex-wife there with my new girlfriend. It is just Saoyudzing howling. 2# is greater than it is weird, right? I just want a nice holiday without the drama." "It is not drama, Kevin," I snapped, my patience fraying. "Sarah is family. We cannot just kick her out because you decided to bring a stranger without asking." Mark looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Serenity, please, do not call her a stranger. It is Kevin's girlfriend. He gave me an ultimatum." "Mark," I insisted, my voice rising. "In my own kitchen, he told me to choose." Mark looked at Kevin, then back at me. He looked at the floor. I knew that look. It was the look of a man who wanted the path of least resistance. It was the look of a man who would throw his wife under the bus to avoid a difficult conversation with his blood relatives. "Honey," Mark said softly, walking over to me and taking my hands. "Look, Kevin is finally happy. He is finally settling down. Do we really want to ruin that? Sarah is Saoyudzing Haling. 2# is greater than well. Sarah is strong. She will understand. We can send her a nice gift basket. Maybe it is better this way. Less tension at the table." I pulled my hands away as if he had burned me. "You are asking me to be rude," I said, feeling the tears prick my eyes. "You are asking me to hurt my friend to accommodate him." Mark's face hardened slightly. "Not at me, but at the situation. I am asking you to keep the peace." "Serenity," he said, his voice firm but quiet. "Just this once. For me, please? I have had a hell of a week at work. I just want a nice Thanksgiving with my brother." "Is that too much to ask?" I looked at Mark. I saw the fatigue in his eyes. I saw the desperation to have that perfect family image he cherished so much. And the people pleaser in me, the weak, pathetic part of me that measured my worth by how happy I could make others, crumbled. I looked at Kevin. He was smirking behind Mark's back, a tiny, victorious smirk. "Fine," I whispered, my voice hollow. "I will tell Sarah not to come." "Thanks, babe," Mark said, kissing my forehead, oblivious to the fact that he had just broken something vital inside me. You are the best. Kevin clapped his hands together. Awesome. I will go get Tiffany. You guys are going to love her. She is a fire. The silence in the house after Mark went upstairs to shower was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the water running through the pipes in the walls. It should have been a comforting sound, the sound of my husband washing away the day, preparing to settle in for the night. But instead, it sounded distant, like he was washing his hands of the mess downstairs. I needed to keep moving. If I stopped moving, I would start crying. And if I started crying, I would not be able to stop. I decided to set the dining room table for Thursday. It was early, but I needed the distraction. I needed to see the crystal glasses lined up in perfect rows. I needed to see order. The vintage lace tablecloths, the ones my grandmother had embroidered by hand, were stored in the credenza in Mark's home office. I walked toward the study, my slippered feet making no sound on the thick runners. The door to the office was ajar, spilling a slice of yellow light across the dark hallway floor. I frowned. Mark always closed the door. He was particular about the temperature control in that room for his humidors. I pushed the door open gently. The scene before me took a moment to register. Kevin was standing behind Mark's massive mahogany desk. He was not just looking at it. He was bent over, one hand deep inside the center drawer, the other rifling through a stack of papers on the desktop. The soft glow of the desk lamp illuminated the sweat glistening on his forehead. He looked like a raccoon caught in a trash can, frantic and hungry. "Kevin?" I said, my voice sharp with shock. Kevin jumped. He jerked his hand out of the drawer so fast that he knocked over a framed photograph of Mark and me on our wedding day. It fell face down on the leather blotter with a dull thud. "Jesus." "Serenity," Kevin shouted, clutching his chest. "Do not sneak up on people like that. You nearly gave me a heart attack." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a breathless wheeze. He moved away from the desk quickly, putting his hands in his pockets, trying to look casual, but his eyes were darting around the room, checking the exits. "What are you doing in Mark's desk?" I asked, stepping fully into the room. "That is private. I was looking for a pen," Kevin said, shrugging his shoulders. He gestured vaguely at the room. "I needed to write down the Wi-Fi password for Tiffany. She is asking for it." I could not find a pen in the kitchen. "There is a cup full of pens right next to the fridge." "Kevin," I said, my suspicion hardening into a cold knot in my stomach. "And the Wi-Fi password is on the magnet on the refrigerator door. You know that. You have been here a dozen times." Kevin's face darkened. The mask of the goofy brother slipped, revealing the sneer beneath. "Okay, relax. Inspector Gadget," he snapped. "I just wanted a piece of paper. Why are you so paranoid? Do you think I am stealing the family silver?" He walked past me, deliberately bumping his shoulder against mine. It was a small, petty act of aggression. "You really need to chill out." "Serenity," he muttered as he reached the doorway. "It must be exhausting being this uptight all the time. No wonder Mark stays late at the office." He left the room, his footsteps heavy and loud as he retreated toward the guest wing. I stood there, shaking. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "He is lying," my inner voice screamed. He was not looking for a pen. I walked around the desk. My legs felt weak. I righted the photograph he had knocked over. Mark and I looked so happy in the picture, so oblivious. I looked at the desk. Papers were shuffled. The drawer was slightly askew. I sat down in Mark's leather chair. It was still warm, but not from Mark. It retained the heat of Kevin's body, and the thought made me nauseous. I began to tidy the papers he had disturbed. Invoices for the marina, a quote for roof repairs. Nothing unusual. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the pregnancy hormones really were making me crazy. Just like Kevin said, I looked down at the floor. The Persian rug, a deep red, intricate pattern, was rucked up slightly near the wastebasket, as if someone had kicked it or shoved something under it in a hurry. I leaned down, groaning slightly as my belly got in the way, and smoothed the rug. As I pulled the edge back, I saw it, a white envelope. It had been shoved underneath the carpet, hidden from view. My breath hitched. I reached out and picked it up. It was crumpled, as if someone had clenched it in a fist. The return address was not a bank I recognized. It was from a company called Titan Capital Lenders based in New Jersey. The red, bold text on the front stamped below the plastic window read, "Final notice. Immediate action required." My hands were trembling so badly I could barely open the flap. I pulled out the single sheet of paper. "Dear Mr. Mark Vance, this is a final notification regarding the default on your commercial loan. Account number ending in 4590. As of November 24th, the outstanding balance of $75,000, including late fees and interest, remains unpaid. Failure to remit the full amount within 48 hours will result in the commencement of foreclosure proceedings on the collateral property listed as security." I read the words again and again. $75,000, a commercial loan, but Mark's business was debt-free. We prided ourselves on it. Mark often bragged at dinner parties that we owned everything outright. I looked at the date on the letter. It was dated 3 days ago. I felt the room spin. $75,000 was a lot of money, but it was not enough to bankrupt us. What terrified me was the secrecy. Why would Mark take out a loan from a predatory lender in New Jersey? And why was the letter hidden under the rug in his office? Then, the realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. Uitzinghaling. 2 hekjes groter dan Kevin. Kevin had been at the mailbox when he arrived. I had seen him pause by the driveway gate before pulling up to the house. He must have grabbed the mail. He must have seen this letter and tried to hide it. But why would Kevin hide Mark's mail? Unless it was not Mark's loan. I looked at the letter again. The name was Mark's, but the address listed for the collateral property was not our main house. I squinted at the fine print at the bottom of the page. Collateral, Lakeview Cabin, Parcel Identification, Uitzinghao Ling, Tsingho Dayu, the vacation home, the cabin that Mark and Kevin had inherited jointly from their father. My mind raced, connecting dots I did not want to connect. Kevin asking Mark to sign over the cabin earlier, Kevin's desperation, Kevin's business he kept talking about. He took out a loan using the cabin as collateral, I thought, my hand flying to my mouth. He used Mark's name. He committed fraud. I felt sick, physically sick. I wanted to run upstairs and shove the paper in Mark's face. I wanted to scream, but I stopped. If I showed this to Mark now, what would happen? Kevin would deny it. He would say it was a mistake. He would say I planted it, or worse. Mark would look at his crying, pathetic younger brother and find a way to pay it off just to make the problem go away. Mark would cover for him. He always did. It is just money. Serenity. He is family. No, not this time. This was a felony. This was stealing from us. I needed proof that could not be explained away. I needed to be smarter than them. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My fingers felt like sausages, clumsy and slow. I placed the letter on the desk, smoothed out the wrinkles as best I could, and took a picture. I made sure the text was clear. I took a second picture of the envelope. Then, I took a picture of the rug where it had been hidden. I quickly folded the letter back up and shoved it back under the rug, exactly how I had found it. I stood up, gripping the edge of the desk. My world was tilting. The man upstairs showering was either a liar or a fool, and the man downstairs was a thief, and I was trapped in this house with both of them. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the living room. The sound of glass shattering against stone. Zou je ding hao ling. Zwei Raude ist größer als I froze. Then another crash. And shouting, I hurried out of the office, moving as fast as my pregnancy allowed. The adrenaline surged through me, masking the back pain. When I reached the living room, the scene was chaotic. Kevin was standing in the middle of the room. He had swept a tray of decorative candles off the coffee table. Glass shards and wax were scattered across the hardwood floor. He was red-faced, his chest heaving. Tiffany, the girl I had not even met yet, was standing in the doorway leading to the garage. She was chewing gum, looking bored, wearing a coat that looked like it was made of pink plastic. What is going on? I yelled, stepping into the room. Kevin spun around to face me. His eyes were wild. You think you are better than me, he screamed. He pointed a shaking finger at me. Do not deny it. I saw the way you looked at me when I asked for a beer. Like I was trash. Like I was dirt on your precious floor. Kevin, stop it, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, though my heart was pounding in my throat. You are breaking things. Stop it right now. I am not breaking things, Kevin yelled, kicking a sofa cushion onto the floor. I am expressing myself. You sit here in your ivory tower, judging me. You and your little friend, Sarah. You are probably texting her right now, laughing at me, laughing at my car, laughing at my girlfriend. He gestured to Tiffany, who rolled her eyes. Babe, calm down, Tiffany said, her voice raspy. She is pregnant. Do not hit her. Kevin ignored her. He took a step toward me. You did not even invite Tiffany in. He spat. You left her in the car like a dog. That is how much you respect me. I did not leave her in the car, I said, backing away until my hips hit the wall. You said you were going to get her. I was waiting for you. Liar, Kevin screamed. He picked up a ceramic coaster and hurled it across the room. It smashed against the fireplace, inches from the antique clock. You just wanted her gone. You want everyone gone who is not perfect like you. Well, guess what? Serenity, your life is not perfect. Mark is miserable. He told me so. He told me he hates how controlling you are. The words were designed to hurt, to maim, but strangely, they did not sting as much as before. Because I had the picture on my phone, I knew who he really was now. He was not a victim. He was a criminal. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the rage. He was terrified. He knew the loan was due. He knew he needed that cabin. He was trying to break me down, to make me so emotionally exhausted that I would just give in to whatever he wanted just to make the screaming stop. It was a tactic. It was abuse. Mark came running down the stairs, a towel still draped around his neck, his hair wet. What the hell is going on? Mark shouted. Rushing into the room, Kevin immediately collapsed onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands, sobbing. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. She hates me. Mark, Kevin wailed, his voice muffled by his palms. She just... Zou you ting hao, Ling. 2# is greater than she started screaming at me, about Sarah. She called me a loser. I cannot take it anymore. I just want to go home. Mark looked at the broken glass. He looked at Kevin sobbing. Then he looked at me. His eyes were full of accusation. Serenity? Mark asked, his voice low and disappointed. What did you say to him? I looked at my husband. I looked at the man who was supposed to be my partner, and in that moment, seeing him hesitate, seeing him consider for even a second that I was the villain, something inside me turned to stone. I did not say a word. Mark, I said coldly. I touched the phone in my pocket. I had the truth, but I would not give it to them yet. Not while Kevin was playing the victim. I would wait. I would wait until there was no rug for him to hide under. I will call the housekeeper to clean this up, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Dinner is at 7. I turned and walked away, leaving Mark to comfort the monster who was stealing his life away, dollar by dollar. As I climbed the stairs, I did not feel the pain in my back anymore. All I felt was the cold, sharp clarity of a woman who was done being nice. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. The heavy snowfall from the night before had turned to sleet, coating the windows of the lake house in a jagged layer of ice. Inside, the air should have been warm with the promise of celebration. Instead, it felt thin and brittle, like a rubber band stretched to its breaking point. I had been awake since 4 in the morning. My back felt like it was being compressed by a vice, and my feet were so swollen I had to wear my husband's slippers. I moved around the kitchen like a ghost, basting the 20-pound organic turkey, prepping the glazed carrots, and arranging the cranberry relish into crystal bowls. Nobody offered to help. Not Kevin, who slept until 11. Not Tiffany, who I had yet to officially meet despite her being under my roof for 12 hours. And not Mark, who was hiding in the garage, pretending to fix a snowblower that I knew for a fact was working perfectly. He was avoiding me. He was avoiding the conversation about the broken glass and the loan shark letter I had found under the rug. Around noon, the guests began to arrive. Mark's mother, Joyce, swept in with her usual cloud of lavender perfume and passive aggression. She kissed my cheek, but her eyes were already scanning the room for her precious sons. You look tired. Serenity, Joyce said, handing me a store-bought pumpkin pie that still had the price tag on it. You really should not let yourself go just because you are pregnant. Mark needs a wife who keeps up appearances. Thank you, Joyce, I said, taking the pie. My inner voice screamed, I am carrying your grandson and cooking a 5-course meal while your son hides in the garage. But I said nothing. I smiled the smile of a woman who was slowly dying inside. Then, Tiffany made her entrance. I was in the dining room, adjusting the centerpiece, when I heard the click-clack of heels on the hardwood floor. I looked up. Tiffany was younger than I expected, perhaps 24. She was wearing a dress that was entirely inappropriate for a family Thanksgiving in Vermont. A tight, neon pink bandage dress that barely covered her thighs. But it was not the dress that made my blood run cold. It was the shoes. She was wearing stiletto heels, muddy, wet stiletto heels, and she was walking directly across my white wool rug. I watched in horror as she left small, dark indentations in the pristine fabric. Hi, she said, popping a bubble of gum. You must be Serenity. Kevin said you were intense. I stared at her feet. Tiffany, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We do not wear shoes in the house, especially not on the white rug. Tiffany looked down at her feet. then back at me. She laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Relax," she said. "They are designer. I am not taking them off. They complete the outfit. Besides, my pedicure is chipped." She walked past me, deliberately digging her heels into the carpet with each step. She walked over to the buffet table where I had laid out the appetizers. She picked up a crostini with fig jam and goat cheese, took a bite, and made a face. "Ew," she said, spitting the half-chewed food into a napkin and tossing it onto the table. "Do you have any ranch dip? This tastes like old people food." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I had spent 3 hours making that jam from scratch. Kevin walked in behind her. Wearing a tracksuit, he saw Tiffany and grinned. "Hey, babe," Kevin said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Making friends with the lady of the manor. She is trying to make me take my shoes off," Tiffany complained, leaning into him like I am a child. "Serenity." "Seriously?" Kevin Sihil, looking at me with exhaustion. "Can you just chill for one day? It is a holiday. Let the girl wear her shoes. You can afford a cleaning crew." I looked at Mark, who had just entered the room with his mother. I waited for him to say something. I waited for him to defend his home, his wife, his rules. Mark looked at the mud on the rug. He winced, but then he looked at Kevin's defiant face and his mother's expectant gaze. "It is fine, honey," Mark mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "It is just a rug. We can clean it later. Let us not make a scene." "It is just a rug." The words echoed in my head. It was not just a rug. It was a boundary, and they had just trampled over it, wiping their dirty feet on my dignity. I felt a shift deep inside my chest. It was a physical sensation, like a heavy door slamming shut and locking. The desperation to please them, the anxiety about being liked. It all suddenly felt very heavy and very useless. I looked at Mark, really looked at him, and for the first time, I did not see the man I loved. I saw a weak, spineless coward. "I will be in the kitchen," I said quietly. I retreated to the kitchen, but the chaos followed me. The house filled with the loud voices of Mark's family. They drank my wine. They ate my food. They complained about the temperature. They complained about the music. An hour later, I was carrying the turkey platter toward the dining room. It was heavy, the porcelain hot against my oven mitts. As I passed the hallway console table, I saw Tiffany standing there. She was holding my grandmother's vase. It was a delicate thing, hand-painted porcelain from the 19th century. It was the only thing I had left of my grandmother. I had placed it on a high shelf, safe from children and pets. Tiffany must have climbed on a chair to get it. She was holding it up to the light, taking a selfie with it. "Tiffany, please put that down," I said, my voice trembling. "That is very old and very fragile." Tiffany jumped. She turned around too fast. The vase slipped from her fingers. Time seemed to slow down. I watched the vase fall. I watched it hit the marble floor of the foyer. "Xiao Yu Jing Hao Ling," 2 hashes greater than crash. The sound was sickening. 1,000 pieces of blue and white porcelain skittered across the floor. I stood frozen, the turkey platter heavy in my arms. I stared at the shards of my grandmother's legacy. Tiffany looked down at the mess. She did not look horrified. She did not look sorry. She looked annoyed. "Oops," she said. She looked at me. "You should not leave your junk lying around where people can knock it over." Kevin and Mark ran into the hall at the sound of the crash. "What happened?" Mark asked. "She yelled at me," Tiffany cried immediately, pointing a manicured finger at me. She snuck up on me and screamed, and I dropped it. I could have cut my foot. Kevin rushed to Tiffany, checking her legs. Babe, are you okay? Did the glass hit you? I stood there, holding the turkey, tears streaming down my face. I looked at Mark. He was looking at the broken vase, then at Tiffany, then at me. Mark, I whispered. She broke Nana's vase. Mark let out a long breath. He ran a hand through his hair. Okay, everyone calm down, Mark said. It was an accident. It was not an accident, I screamed, my voice finally breaking. She was playing with it. She had no business touching it. Serenity. Stop yelling, Mark snapped at me. His voice was loud, echoing off the high ceilings. You are upsetting everyone. It is just a vase. We can glue it back together. Glue it back together. Something inside me finally snapped, mirroring the porcelain on the floor. Joyce walked in, shaking her head. Honestly, Serenity, crying over a pot? You are ruining Thanksgiving. Think of the baby. You are being hysterical. I looked at them, the tableau of my life. Kevin, the thief, coddling his trashy girlfriend. Joyce, the matriarch, judging me with cold eyes. Mark, my husband, telling me that my pain was an inconvenience to his holiday. They were all looking at me like I was the crazy one, like I was the problem. I lowered the turkey platter onto the console table. I took off the oven mitts. I wiped the tears from my face. I did not scream again. I did not argue. A strange, cold calm washed over me. It was the calm of a soldier who realizes they are behind enemy lines and there is no rescue coming. I realized then that I was not a member of this family. I was the staff. I was the bank. I was the host organism for their parasite. You are right, I said. My voice was completely flat. I sounded like a stranger to my own ears. It is just a vase. I am sorry for overreacting. Mark let out a sigh of relief. Thank you, honey. Now come on, let us eat. The food smells great. He put an arm around Kevin and led him back to the dining room. Tiffany stepped over the shards of my grandmother's vase, kicking a piece aside with her heel, and followed them. I stood alone in the hallway for a moment. I looked at the broken pieces. I did not bend down to pick them up. I left them there, sharp and jagged on the floor. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I checked the photo I had taken last night. The letter from the lender, $75,000. I looked toward the dining room, where I could hear them laughing. Kevin was telling a joke. Mark was laughing. Laugh while you can. I thought, enjoy the turkey. I smoothed my dress over my stomach. I walked into the dining room, not to serve them, but to watch them. I was no longer the victim. I was the witness, and the trial was about to begin. The dining room was a theater of the absurd. I sat at the head of the table, flanked by my husband and his brother, watching them devour the meal I had spent 2 days preparing. The crystal chandelier cast a warm, golden glow over the scene, illuminating the roasted turkey, the silver platters of stuffing, and the hollow faces of the people eating it. Tiffany was picking at the turkey with her fingers, ignoring the silverware. She had not apologized for the broken vase. In fact, she seemed to have forgotten it entirely. Her attention now focused on scrolling through her phone under the table. The blue light from the screen illuminated her bored expression. Mark was drinking too much. I could see it in the flush of his cheeks and the glazing of his eyes. He was on his 3rd glass of Cabernet, using the alcohol to numb the tension that hung over the table like a guillotine blade. Kevin, however, was sharp. He was barely eating. He was watching Mark, waiting for the right moment. He swirled the wine in his glass, his eyes predatory. "So, Mark," Kevin started, leaning forward. His voice was smooth, practiced. "I have been thinking a lot about the future, about legacy. Dad always said family helps family, right?" Mark nodded enthusiastically, eager to agree with anything that sounded pleasant. "Of course, Kev. Family is everything." "Exactly," Kevin said. He glanced at Tiffany, then back at Mark. "That is why I want to talk to you about a business proposition. I am tired of bouncing around. Mark, I want to settle down. I want to build something real, like you did." "That is great, Kevin," Mark said, smiling. "I am proud of you." I knew this tone. It was the setup. My hand tightened around my water glass. "I have a plan," Kevin continued. "A real estate development project. It is foolproof, but I need capital. I need a solid asset to leverage for the initial buy-in. Banks will not look at me because of my credit score, which is unfair, obviously, but that is the system." He paused, taking a sip of wine. "I need you to sign over the deed to the lake cabin," Kevin said. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Tiffany stopped scrolling. "The cabin?" Mark asked, his smile faltering. "You mean the vacation home?" Kevin nodded. "Just on paper. Mark, I will not sell it or anything. I just need it in my name so I can show the investors I have collateral. Once the business takes off in 6 months, I will transfer it right back. It is just a formality." I felt the blood rushing in my ears. The audacity was breathtaking. He had already used the cabin as collateral for a loan he was defaulting on. Now he needed the deed to sell it quickly or refinance it before the lender seized it and exposed his fraud. He was trying to get Mark to unknowingly legalize his crime. "Kevin," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. "That cabin belongs to us. We hope to spend our summers there with the baby." Kevin's head snapped toward me. His eyes were venomous. "I am talking to my brother, Serenity," he spat. "This does not concern you. It concerns me when you ask for a piece of property worth $500,000. I retorted. Kevin slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. "See?" He pointed a shaking finger at Mark. "See what I mean? Mark, she controls everything. You cannot even make a decision about your own inheritance without her permission. It is pathetic." Mark looked between us, panicked. He looked at Kevin, who was playing the victim perfectly, and then at me, the pregnant wife who was ruining the vibe. "Honey," Mark said to me, his voice pleading, "it is just the cabin. We hardly use it, and if it helps Kevin get on his feet. Saluting 2 hash is greater than maybe. It is not a bad idea." I stared at my husband. I looked at the man who was willing to give away our child's future because he was too weak to say no to a bully. "Mark," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "do not do this. You do not know what he is doing." Kevin stood up, knocking his chair back. "She hates me," Kevin shouted, his face turning red. "She has always hated me. She thinks I am a loser. She thinks I am going to steal it. Admit it. Serenity, you think I am a thief." I looked him dead in the eye. I did not blink. "I think you are desperate, Kevin." Kevin turned to Mark, his eyes filling with fake tears. "Mark, please, I need this. This is my last chance. If I do not get this deal, I am done. I will have nothing. Are you really going to let her stop you from helping your own flesh and blood? Mom would want you to do this." Mark crumbled. The mention of their mother was the final blow. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pen. "Where are the papers?" Mark asked softly. "Do you have them?" Kevin's tears vanished instantly. He reached into his duffel bag near the door and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He had brought the papers with him. "It was premeditated, right here," Kevin said, placing the document on the table next to the gravy boat. "Just sign by the sticky note." Mark uncapped the pen. He hovered over the paper. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I reached into my pocket for my phone. I was going to show Mark the picture. I was going to blow this whole charade apart right now. "Mark, wait," I commanded. Mark hesitated. The pen tip millimeters from the paper. "Just sign it." "Mark," Kevin yelled. "Be a man for once." Suddenly, the doorbell rang. The sound was loud and jarring in the tense room. Everyone froze. "Who is that?" Joyce asked. Looking around, were we expecting anyone else? Kevin looked nervous. He glanced at the door, then back at the papers. "Just sign it." "Mark, ignore the door." The doorbell rang again, long and insistent. "I will get it," I said, pushing my chair back. "Sit down." "Serenity," Kevin barked. "Mark is signing." I ignored him. I walked out of the dining room, my heart pounding in my throat. I knew who it was. I had not uninvited her. In fact, after I found the letter last night, I had sent her a text. I had told her to come, and I had told her to bring everything she had. I walked to the front door. I could hear Kevin shouting at Mark in the dining room, urging him to hurry. I unlocked the heavy door and pulled it open. Sarah stood on the porch, wrapped in a thick wool coat, snowflakes clinging to her dark hair. She looked tired, but her eyes were fierce. She was not alone. Standing next to her was a tall man in a gray suit. He wore rimless glasses and held a black leather briefcase. He looked like a man who charged by the minute and did not make jokes. "Hi, Serenity," Sarah said softly. "Hi, Sarah," I said, stepping aside. "You are just in time." "Who is this?" I asked, looking at the man. "This is David," Sarah said. "He is my boyfriend, and he is a forensic accountant." I felt a wave of relief so strong it almost knocked me over. "Come in," I said. "They are in the dining room." Sarah and David stepped into the foyer. I led them toward the dining room. As we approached, I heard Mark's voice. Okay, I am signing. Just stop yelling." We walked into the room just as Mark pressed the pen to the paper. "Stop." Sarah's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. Mark jerked his hand back, dropping the pen. Ink stained the white tablecloth. Kevin spun around. When he saw Sarah, his face went pale. When he saw the man next to her, his eyes widened in genuine terror. "Sarah?" Kevin stammered. "What are you doing here?" "I told Serenity you were not welcome." "I did not listen," I said, walking to the head of the table. "Because unlike you, Kevin, I do not take orders from parasites." "Who is this guy?" Kevin demanded, pointing at David. "Get out of my house." David adjusted his glasses. He stepped forward, placing his briefcase on the sideboard, right next to the pumpkin pie. "I am not leaving." "Mr. Vance," David said calmly. "My name is David Miller. I am here representing the interests of Sarah Vance, a shareholder in the family trust. And I am also here because we have reason to believe you are attempting to commit deed fraud." Kevin laughed, but it was a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "Fraud? You are crazy." Mark looked at me, then at Sarah. "What is going on?" David opened his briefcase. He pulled out a stack of documents. We know about the loan from Titan Capital. Kevin, David said, we know you forged Mark's signature 3 months ago to secure $75,000. And we know you are defaulting. The reason you want this deed is not for a business. It is because Titan Capital is threatening to break your legs if you do not pay up, or give them the title you promised. The room went deathly silent. Mark stood up slowly. He looked at Kevin. Is that true? Mark asked. His voice was trembling. Kevin's face twisted. The mask fell away completely. There was no more brother, no more victim, only a cornered rat. He looked at the papers on the table. He looked at me, and then he did the unthinkable. Saoting Haling. 2 hash is greater than. He lunged. He did not lung for Mark. He did not lunge for the door. He lunged for the documents in David's hand, but I was standing in his way. Out of my way. You bitch, Kevin screamed. He shoved me. Hard. I was not expecting the violence. I lost my footing on the polished floor. My hands flailed, grasping for the edge of the table. But I missed. I fell backward. The world tilted. I hit the floor with a sickening thud. My hip took the brunt of the impact, but the shockwave traveled through my body. Serenity, Mark screamed. Pain exploded in my abdomen. A sharp, tearing pain that stole my breath. I lay on the floor, staring up at the crystal chandelier. It was spinning. I heard Sarah screaming. I heard the sound of men fighting, but all I could feel was the warm, wet sensation spreading between my legs. And then darkness began to creep in at the edges of my vision. The world was a kaleidoscope of blurred shapes and muffled sounds. I was lying on the floor, staring up at the crystal prisms of the chandelier, which looked like frozen tears suspended in the air. The pain in my abdomen was a rhythmic, crushing wave, pulling me under and then spitting me back out. My baby was the only thought screaming through my mind. Please, God, not the baby. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard chaos. The polite veneer of the holiday dinner had been shattered, replaced by the raw, ugly sounds of violence. You touched her. Mark's voice was unrecognizable, a guttural roar of pure animal rage. You touched my wife. I turned my head slightly, wincing as a sharp spasm shot up my spine. Mark was on top of Kevin, my husband, the man who abhorred confrontation, the man who apologized to waiters when they got his order wrong, was pounding his fists into his brother's face. There was a sickening crunch of bone meeting bone. Get off me, Kevin shrieked, his voice high and terrified. He bucked and flailed, knocking over a dining chair. David, Sarah's boyfriend, was trying to pull Mark off. Mark, stop. You are going to kill him. We need to call an ambulance. Sarah was beside me instantly. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it so hard her nails dug into my skin. Serenity? Sarah cried. Stay with me. Look at me. Do not close your eyes. I tried to speak, but only a gasp came out. I felt wetness soaking through my dress. It was warm and sticky. Blood. Oh my God. Tiffany screamed from somewhere near the buffet table. She is bleeding. There is blood on the rug. Shut up. Sarah yelled over her shoulder, her voice fierce. Call 911. Now. I looked at Mark. David had finally managed to drag him off Kevin. Mark was panting, his shirt torn, his knuckles bloody. He looked down at me, and the rage in his eyes instantly evaporated, replaced by a horror so profound It looked like his soul was leaving his body. Serenity. 小雨静好令. 2 hashes greater than Mark whispered. He fell to his knees beside me, ignoring Kevin, who was crawling away like a wounded snake. Wiping blood from his nose, Mark's hands hovered over my stomach, afraid to touch me. Oh God, baby, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. The pain came again, sharper this time, like a hot knife twisting inside me. I let out a low moan, curling onto my side. It hurts, I whispered. Mark, the baby. 小雨静好令. R. 静好大雨. Joyce, my mother-in-law, was standing by the window, clutching her pearls. She was not looking at me. She was looking at Kevin. Kevin, are you okay? Joyce wailed. Look at your face. Mark, you are an animal. How could you hurt your brother? Mark whipped his head around to look at his mother. The look he gave her was terrifying. It was the look of a man who had finally seen the monster beneath the mother. He pushed her. Mark screamed at her. He pushed my pregnant wife. Shut your mouth. Mother, do not say another word. Joyce recoiled as if slapped. She had never heard Mark raise his voice in her life. Sirens wailed in the distance. Growing louder, the blue and red lights began to flash against the snow-covered windows, painting the room in a grotesque disco rhythm. Kevin scrambled to his feet. He looked at the door, then at the window. He was looking for an escape. 小雨静好令. 2 hash is greater than I did not mean to. Kevin stammered, backing away. She slipped. You all saw it. She slipped. You are not going anywhere, David said, stepping in front of the door. He looked calm, menacingly so. The police are already here, and I have the documents right here on the table. Kevin looked at the papers, the proof of his fraud, then at Tiffany. Tiff, grab the keys, Kevin yelled. We have to go. Tiffany looked at Kevin's bloody face. She looked at the police lights outside. She looked at me, bleeding on the floor. She made a calculation. No way, Tiffany said, stepping back. I am not going to jail for you. You are on your own. Loser, Kevin stared at her, betrayed. Before he could move, the front door burst open. 2 police officers and a team of paramedics rushed in. Madam, can you hear me? A paramedic asked, kneeling beside me. He shone a light in my eyes. Yes, I whispered. My baby. 小雨静好令. 2. Is he okay? We are going to check right now, he said, his voice calm and professional. They lifted me onto a stretcher. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through my body. As they wheeled me out of the dining room, I saw the police officers handcuffing Kevin. He was screaming, crying, begging his mother to help him. Joyce was sobbing, pulling at the officer's sleeve. Mark walked beside the stretcher, holding my hand. His face was streaked with tears. I am here, Serenity, he said. I am right here. I am not leaving you. I looked at him. I saw the remorse. I saw the love, but I also saw the years of enabling, the years of silence that had led to this moment. If he had stopped Kevin years ago, if he had drawn a line, I would not be strapped to a stretcher right now. I pulled my hand away from his grip. Mark looked at his empty hand, stunned. Just 小雨静好令. 2 hash is greater than drive the car, I whispered, closing my eyes. The ambulance ride was a blur of lights and beeping monitors. At the hospital, they rushed me into an examination room. Nurses swarmed around me, cutting off my dress, hooking me up to intravenous lines. An ultrasound machine was wheeled in. The doctor A woman with kind eyes but a serious mouth squirted cold gel onto my stomach. I held my breath. The room went silent. Everyone was listening for one sound. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The heartbeat. It was fast, distressed, but it was there. I let out a sob of relief that shook my entire body. The baby is alive, the doctor said, but you have suffered a placental abruption. It is partial, but serious. You are bleeding internally. We need to monitor this very closely. If the bleeding does not stop, we will have to do an emergency C-section. And at 32 weeks, Saoyuting Haling, Dva, it is risky. She looked at me sternly. You are on absolute bed rest. Mistress Vance, you cannot move. You cannot get stressed. One wrong move, and we lose him. Do you understand? I nodded. I understood perfectly. They moved me to a private room. The lights were dimmed. Mark sat in the chair in the corner, still wearing his blood-stained shirt. He looked like a ghost haunting the room. Around midnight, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. I reached for it weakly. It was a text from Sarah. David gave the police everything. The forged loan docs, the witness statement. Kevin is being charged with assault and fraud. They are holding him without bail because of the flight risk. Tiffany left in an Uber. Are you okay? I typed back slowly. Baby is alive, but it is bad. I put the phone down and looked at Mark. He was staring at his hands. Mark, I said. My voice was raspy. He looked up instantly. Can I get you anything? Water? Ice chips? I need my lawyer. I said. Mark blinked. Now? It is midnight. Call him. I said. Tell him to come first thing in the morning and call a locksmith. A locksmith? Mark asked, confused. I want the locks changed on the house. I said, staring at the ceiling. Tonight, I want the gate code changed. I want the security system reset. Honey, Kevin is in jail, Mark said gently. He cannot get in. I turned my head to look at him. My eyes were dry. I am not talking about Kevin. Mark, I am talking about your mother. I am talking about anyone who thinks they have a right to my home after what happened tonight. Mark opened his mouth to argue, to say that his mother was just upset, that she did not mean it, but he stopped. He saw something in my face that he had never seen before. He saw the death of the people pleaser. Okay, Mark whispered, I will do it. And Mark, I added, my voice cold as the winter wind outside. Saoyuting Haolin. Ketu, yes? If you ever take his side again, Saoyuting Haolin. 2 hash is greater than if you pay 1 cent of his legal fees. Saoyuting Haolin. 2 hash is greater than if you even think about bailing him out. Saoyuting Haolin. 2 hash is greater than do not bother coming back to this hospital. Do not bother coming back to the house. Mark flinched. He nodded slowly, tears spilling down his cheeks again. I will not. He choked out. I promise. I closed my eyes. I was alone in the dark, in pain, terrified for my unborn son. But for the first time in years, I felt powerful. The tragedy had stripped away the niceties. The fire had burned down the forest. But now, finally, I could see the ground. The hospital room was sterile and silent, save for the rhythmic beeping of the fetal monitor. It was a sound that tethered me to reality, a constant reminder that my son was fighting for his life inside me. It had been 3 days since the incident, 3 days of intravenous fluids, steroids to mature the baby's lungs, and nurses checking my vitals every hour. The physical pain had dulled to a constant ache, but the emotional clarity was sharper than ever. I felt like a diamond forged under immense pressure. Cold, hard, and unbreakable, Mark had barely left my side. He slept in the uncomfortable recliner, ate cafeteria food, and looked more haggard with each passing day. He was trying to be the perfect husband now, performing penance. He fluffed my pillows, brought me ice chips, and read books about premature babies. But I did not want his penance. I wanted justice. The door opened, and my lawyer, Arthur Penhaligon, walked in. Arthur was a man in his 60s with silver hair and a suit that cost more than Kevin's entire existence. He had been my father's lawyer, and he had protected my inheritance like a bulldog for decades. "Good morning, Serenity," Arthur said, placing his briefcase on the rolling table. He looked at Mark with a polite but chilly nod. "Mark, Arthur," I said, sitting up slightly. "Thank you for coming. I have the paperwork you requested," Arthur said. He pulled out a thick stack of documents. "The restraining order against Kevin Vance has been granted. It is temporary, but given the assault charges and the hospital records, the judge will almost certainly make it permanent. He is barred from coming within 500 feet of you, Mark, or the residence." "Good," I said. "And the assets?" Arthur glanced at Mark, then back at me. "I have drafted the motion to freeze all joint assets to prevent any unauthorized withdrawals. However, since the accounts are joint, Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling, R. Jinghao Dayu," Mark spoke up, his voice hoarse. "You do not need a motion, Arthur. I will sign whatever she wants." Arthur raised an eyebrow. He handed Mark a document. "This gives Serenity sole power of attorney over the family accounts until further notice. It also removes you as a signatory on the trust for the baby." Mark took the pen. His hand shook, but he signed it without reading the fine print. "Done," Mark whispered. Just then, the door flew open. We had not heard a knock. Joyce stood in the doorway. She looked like a wreck. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red and puffy. She was wearing the same coat she had worn on Thanksgiving. "Mark," Joyce cried, rushing into the room. "Thank God you are here. You have to do something." Mark stood up, blocking her path to my bed. "Mom, what are you doing here? I told you not to come. They are moving him to the county jail," Joyce sobbed, grabbing Mark's arm. "My baby, they are putting him in with murderers and rapists. You have to post bail. Mark, it is $50,000. I do not have that kind of money, but you do. You have to help him." I watched her from the bed. Not once did she look at me. Not once did she ask about her unborn grandson who had almost died because of her baby. Mark pulled his arm away. "Mom, stop. He did not mean to hurt her," Joyce wailed, her voice rising to a shriek. "It was an accident. He was stressed. Serenity provoked him. She brought that lawyer there to humiliate him." "Excuse me?" I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through Joyce's hysterics like a razor blade. Joyce finally looked at me. Her eyes were full of hate. "This is all your fault," she spat. "You always thought you were better than us. You, with your money and your big house. You drove a wedge between my sons. And now you have put my boy in a cage." Arthur stepped forward. "Mistress Vance, I would advise you to let her speak." "Arthur," I said calmly. I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear every venomous thought she had been hiding behind her fake smiles for 5 years. "You are selfish," Joyce hissed. "You have everything, and you could not give Kevin one little thing? One cabin? You are so greedy. You are going to let him rot in jail over money? I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Money? I asked. You think this is about money? He pushed me. Joyce. He assaulted a pregnant woman. He forged Mark's signature. He stole from us. He is family. Joyce screamed. Family forgives. Mark stepped forward. His face was a mask of cold fury I had never seen before. No. Mom, Mark said. His voice was steady, terrifyingly so. Family does not steal. Family does not put their brother in debt. And family definitely does not almost kill their nephew. Joyce stared at him, stunned. Mark, how can you say that? He is your brother, and she is my wife. Mark said, pointing at me. That is my son in her belly. Kevin almost killed them both. Do you get that? If the placenta had detached completely, they would both be dead right now. He is not a monster. Joyce sobbed. He is? Mark said. And you made him one. You coddled him. You made excuses for him. You told him nothing was ever his fault. Well, guess what? This is his fault, and I am done paying for it. Joyce turned to me, desperation in her eyes. Serenity, please. I know you are angry, but be reasonable. Drop the charges. Tell the police it was an accident. I will make him apologize. He will pay you back. Just Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than please. I looked at this woman who had judged my housekeeping, criticized my cooking, and undermined my marriage for years. I saw her for what she was, an enabler, a woman who would burn the world down to keep her golden child warm. Joyce, I said softly. Yes? She asked, hope flickering in her eyes. Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than. Get out. Joyce froze. What? Get out of my room. I said, get out of my life. You are not welcome in my home anymore. You will not see this baby when he is born. You will not see him at Christmas. You will not see him ever. You cannot do that. Joyce shrieked. I am the grandmother. Mark, I said, looking at my husband. Remove her, or I will call security. Mark turned to his mother. You heard her. Mom, go. Joyce looked at Mark, horrified. You are choosing her? Over your own mother? I am choosing my family, Mark said, and you are not it anymore. He took her by the arm. It was not gentle. He marched her to the door. Joyce was screaming, cursing me, calling me every name in the book. You will rot in hell. Serenity, you cold-hearted bitch. I hope that baby. Mark shoved her into the hallway and slammed the door in her face. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark leaned his forehead against the door, his shoulders shaking. He was crying. It was the grieving cry of a man who had just orphaned himself. Arthur cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, that was Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than definitive. I looked at Mark's back. I did not feel pity. I felt relief. The tumor had been cut out. It was painful. Yes, there would be scars, but we could finally heal. Mark turned around. His eyes were red, but he looked lighter. I meant it. Mark said to me, I am done. No more bail. No more excuses. I nodded. Good. Because if you had given her a single cent, Mark, that door would have closed on you. 2. I looked at Arthur file the restraining order against Joyce. 2. I said. Arthur nodded, scribbling on his notepad. On what grounds? Harassment. I said. And emotional distress. I do not want her near me. Consider it done. Arthur said. I leaned back against the pillows. I was exhausted. My body ached, but for the first time in 5 years, the air in the room felt clean. The confrontation was over. The lines were drawn, and I was still standing. The thing about small towns in New England is that news does not travel. It spreads like a contagion. By the time I was discharged from the hospital 5 days later, the story of the Thanksgiving massacre at the Vance estate had already mutated into a dozen different versions, each more lurid than the last. I returned home in a wheelchair, navigating the newly installed ramps that Mark had rushed to put in. The house felt different. It was quieter, colder. The broken vase was gone. The rug had been professionally cleaned, but the memory of the violence hung in the air like smoke. I sat by the window in the living room, a blanket over my legs, watching the snow fall. My phone lay on the side table, vibrating incessantly. I had turned off the ringer, but the screen lit up every few minutes with notifications. Facebook was a battlefield. In one version of the story, I was the villain, the hysterical, hormonal wife who had attacked her poor brother-in-law over a spilled drink. In another, Kevin was a saint who had been framed by my corrupt lawyer. And in the most popular version, driven by Joyce and her bridge club cronies, I was a heartless elitist who was using my money to persecute a struggling young man. I cannot believe she would press charges against family. One comment read on a local community page, "Money really changes people." I heard she would not even let his mother visit the hospital. Cold as ice. I read them. I should not have, but I did. It was a form of self-flagellation, or maybe it was intel. Mark came into the room with a tray of tea and toast. He looked at the phone lighting up. "Do not read that garbage." "Serenity," he said, placing the tray down. "They do not know the truth. They know what your mother tells them," I said, not looking away from the screen. "She has been busy. She started a GoFundMe for Kevin's legal defense. She's calling it the Justice for Kevin Fund." Mark C. Hill, sitting on the sofa opposite me. I saw it. It has raised $200, mostly from Aunt Linda. "It is not about the money, Mark," I said. "It is about the narrative. She is destroying our reputation." "Does it matter?" Mark asked. "We know the truth. The police know the truth. It matters to me," I said. "I have to live here. I have to raise our son here. I do not want him growing up in a town where people whisper that his mother is a monster." I picked up the tea, the warmth seeping into my cold hands. "I need to make a statement," I said. Mark looked alarmed. "A public statement? Serenity. That will just add fuel to the fire. Just ignore them. It will blow over." "No," I said firmly. "Ignoring it is what allowed Kevin to get away with everything for so long. Silence is complicity. I am going to tell the truth." I opened my laptop. I logged into my social media accounts. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I was not going to write a rant. I was going to write a police report disguised as a post. I began to type, "To our friends and neighbors in Burlington. There have been many rumors circulating regarding the events at our home on Thanksgiving. While we usually value our privacy, the malicious lies being spread compel me to set the record straight. Kevin Vance was not arrested for a misunderstanding. He was arrested for felony assault on a pregnant woman and first-degree fraud. He forged my husband's signature to secure illegal loans, jeopardizing our family's financial security. When confronted with irrefutable evidence by a forensic accountant, he attacked me, causing a placental abruption that nearly killed my unborn son. This was not a family dispute. This was a crime. We are grateful to the Burlington Police Department for their swift action. We will not be commenting further. We ask for privacy as we focus on the health of our child. I attach the redacted police report. I attach the photo of the forged loan document. And, most damning of all, I attach the photo of my bruised, purple abdomen taken in the hospital room. Saoyuting Dve. I hit post. Mark watched me. Pale. You posted the picture of your stomach? Show. Do not tell. Mark, I said, closing the laptop. Let them argue with a bruise the size of a dinner plate. Within an hour, the tide turned. The comments shifted from judgment to horror. The Justice for Kevin page was flooded with angry comments demanding the GoFundMe be taken down. Joyce's phone number, which she had foolishly listed on the page, was likely ringing off the hook with people calling her out for defending an abuser. I felt a grim satisfaction. It was not happiness. It was the feeling of winning a war you never wanted to fight. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. I froze. Who could it be? Joyce? A reporter? Mark checked the security camera on his phone. It is a delivery, he said. Flowers. He went to the door and brought back a massive arrangement of white lilies. Who are they from? I asked. Mark read the card. He looked at me, surprised. They are from the country club board, he said, thinking of you and wishing you a speedy recovery. We are so sorry for what you have endured. I leaned back in my chair. The social elite of Burlington had spoken. They had seen the evidence, and they had chosen a side. I was no longer the villain. I was the survivor, but the victory felt hollow. I looked out at the frozen lake. I had won the public opinion. Yes, but I had lost the illusion of a happy family. I had exposed the rot for everyone to see, and somewhere in a cold cell, Kevin was sitting, stewing in his hatred, blaming me for everything, and Joyce was sitting in her small apartment, alone, plotting her next move. The fallout was not over. It was just beginning. But at least now, I controlled the narrative. Mark sat down beside me and took my hand. I am proud of you, he said softly. I looked at him. I am not doing this for you to be proud of me. Mark, I am doing this so no one ever tries to walk over me again. Mark nodded, accepting the new reality. He squeezed my hand. I know, he said, and they will not. I closed my eyes, listening to the silence of the house. It was a lonely sound, but it was safe. And for now, safe was enough. December arrived, burying Vermont under 3 feet of snow. The world outside was white and silent, a blank canvas that mirrored the emptiness inside our house. I was technically safe. The restraining orders were in place. Kevin was in county jail, denied bail due to the flight risk and the severity of the assault charge. Joyce had gone radio silent after the public backlash from my Facebook post. The neighbors had stopped whispering and started bringing casseroles, leaving them on the porch like offerings to a grieving deity. But peace did not feel like peace. It felt like the stunned silence after a bomb goes off. I spent my days on the sofa, counting kicks. 1, 2, 3. Every movement of the baby was a reassurance, but also a reminder of how close we had come to losing him. I could not look at the dining room without seeing the ghost of Kevin lunging at me. I could not look at the foyer without hearing the crash of my grandmother's vase. The house, once my pride and joy, felt tainted. I had hired a specialized cleaning crew to scrub the blood from the floorboards, but I could still smell the metallic tang of it in my memory. I had ordered new rugs, new furniture, trying to erase the physical evidence of that night. Mark was trying. 2. He was trying so hard it was painful to watch. He came home early every day. He cooked dinner, usually burning it, but I ate it without complaint. He had cut off all contact with his family, blocked their numbers, returned their letters unopened. One evening, I found him in the nursery. He was assembling the crib, his back to the door. He was not moving. He was just standing there, holding a screwdriver, staring at the empty wooden bars. "Mark?" I asked softly. He jumped, wiping his face quickly with his sleeve. "Hey," he said, his voice thick. "Just Sayutsing Hao Ling. 2# is greater than finishing up here." I wheeled myself into the room. It was painted a soft sage green. It was supposed to be a room of hope. "You have been crying," I stated. Mark sat down heavily on the floor, leaning back against the crib. He looked defeated. "I keep thinking about when we were kids," Mark said, staring at his hands. "Kevin and me, we used to build forts in the living room. He used to follow me everywhere. He was so Sayutsing Haoling. 2. Sweet. Serenity. He was not always like this." I sat there, listening. I knew this was the grief talking, the mourning for a brother who had died long before he went to jail. "People change, Mark," I said, "or maybe they just reveal who they really are." "I know," Mark whispered, "but I keep wondering." Sayutsing Hao Ling. 2# is greater than if I had been tougher on him earlier. If I had not given him money every time he asked. If I had not bailed him out of those scrapes in college. Did I do this? Did I create him? I looked at my husband, a man broken by his own kindness. "You enabled him." "Mark," I said, "I was not going to lie to make him feel better. Not anymore. You watered the weeds because you were afraid to pull them out, but you did not plant the seeds." Kevin made his own choices. He chose greed. He chose violence. Mark nodded slowly, accepting the judgment. "I just miss having a family," he admitted. "It is just us now." I placed a hand on my stomach. "It is not just us," I said. "We are starting our own family, a real one. One where we do not lie to each other. One where we do not let people hurt us." Mark looked at my stomach. A small, tentative smile touched his lips. "Yeah," he said, "you are right." He stood up and walked over to me. He knelt beside the wheelchair and kissed my hand. "I am sorry," he said again. It was the 1000th time he had said it. "Stop apologizing." "Mark," I said, "just be better. Be the father this baby deserves, not the brother Kevin had." "I will," he promised. The next day, Tiffany was found. Or rather, she was arrested. She had been caught trying to use one of our credit cards at a motel in New Jersey. Kevin must have given her the number before he was locked up. The police called to tell us. They asked if we wanted to press charges for credit card fraud. I sat by the phone, listening to the officer. "Yes," I said, "press charges. Every single one." Mark watched me from the kitchen. "Is that necessary?" he asked gently. "She is just a kid. She was just caught up in Kevin's mess." I looked at him. The old Mark was peeking through. The Mark who wanted to forgive, to smooth things over. She watched me bleed on the floor and worried about her shoes. "Mark," I said coldly, "she left me there. She is not a victim. She is an accomplice. If we let her go, she will do it to someone else." Mark closed his mouth. He nodded. "Okay," he said. "You are right." I hung up the phone. It felt heavy. Justice was heavy. It was not a triumphant feeling. It was a chore. It was a constant vigilance. That night, I dreamt of the lake. In the dream, the water was black and still. I was floating in a boat, and hands were reaching up from the depths, trying to pull me under. Kevin's hands, Joyce's hands, Tiffany's hands. I woke up gasping, clutching the sheets. Mark was asleep beside me. The house was silent. I got out of bed, wincing at the stiffness in my back. I walked to the window. The moon was full, illuminating the frozen expanse of the lake. I realized then that the fear would never fully go away. The innocence was gone. I would never be the naive, people-pleasing serenity again. That woman had died on the dining room floor, but the woman who replaced her, she was a survivor. She was a mother wolf, and she was ready for whatever came next. I looked at my reflection in the glass. My face looked older, harder, but my eyes were clear. Let them come, I thought. Let them try. I went back to bed, lying close to Mark for warmth, but keeping one eye open. The storm had passed, but the wreckage remained, and we had to live in it. The day before Christmas Eve, the lake house looked like a mausoleum. We had draped white sheets over the furniture, turning the sofas and armchairs into ghostly mounds in the dim light. The heating was turned down to 50 degrees, just enough to keep the pipes from bursting, but cold enough to chill the bone. I stood in the foyer one last time, checking my purse for passports. My back still ached, a dull, throbbing reminder of the scar tissue forming inside me. But I stood tall. I wore a heavy wool coat that hid my 7-month bump, armor against the world. Mark carried the last of our suitcases to the waiting car. He paused at the door, looking back at the house. It was the home he had grown up in, the home he had fought to keep, and now, the home we were abandoning. "Are you sure about the alarm codes?" Mark asked. "I am sure," I said. "I changed them this morning. The only people who can get in are the police and the security company. And the gate? Locked." I confirmed, and I instructed the security team to treat any trespassers as hostile, even if they share your last name. Mark nodded. He did not look sad anymore. He looked resolved. He walked out into the biting wind without looking back. I took one last look at the spot on the floor where Tiffany had shattered the vase. The marble was clean. The cracks were gone, but the house felt heavy with ghosts. I stepped out, pulled the heavy oak door shut, and listened to the satisfying click of the deadbolt. It sounded like the closing of a casket. As our car pulled away, driving down the long, winding driveway, I imagined what would happen in 48 hours. I had not told anyone we were leaving. In fact, I had let Joyce believe that Christmas dinner was still happening. I had let the aunts and uncles believe that the doors would be open at noon on December 25th. I pictured them arriving, Joyce in her fur coat, clutching a store-bought pie as a peace offering she did not mean, Aunt Linda with her hungry eyes, Uncle Bob looking for free scotch. They would drive up to the gate and find it locked. They would press the buzzer, but no one would answer. They would peer through the iron bars and see the dark, silent house, the driveway unplowed, the windows shuttered. They would stand there in the snow, realizing that the bank was closed, the restaurant was shuttered, the automated teller machine was out of order. A small, cold smile touched my lips. We flew out of John F. Kennedy International Airport in the first-class cabin of a Swiss air flight. As the plane climbed above the clouds, leaving the gray sludge of New York behind, I felt the tension finally drain from my shoulders. Kevin had pleaded guilty 2 days ago. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender, had told him there was no way to fight the forensic evidence and the witness statements. He took a plea deal for 5 years in state prison for aggravated assault and fraud. 5 years. My son would be walking and talking by the time his uncle saw the light of day. And even then, he would never see us. We landed in Zurich and took a private car up into the mountains. We rented a chalet in Gstaad, a place so expensive and exclusive that the air itself smelled like money and privacy. On Christmas morning, I sat on the wooden balcony of the chalet, wrapped in a thick blanket. The Alps rose up around us like jagged white teeth against a brilliant blue sky. The air was crisp and clean, untainted by betrayal. Mark came out with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He sat beside me, resting his hand on my stomach. "He is kicking," Mark said, smiling. "He likes the mountain air," I said. We sat in silence, watching the snow sparkle in the sun. It was the first peaceful holiday I could remember in a decade. There was no yelling, no passive-aggressive comments about my weight or my cooking, no walking on eggshells. My phone buzzed on the small table between us. I looked at it. It was a text from a number I did not have saved, but I knew who it was. Joyce. She must have borrowed someone's phone when she realized I had blocked her. I picked it up and read the preview. "We are at the gate. It is locked. This is not funny. Serenity. It is Christmas. Mom is freezing. Open the gate. We just want to be a family." I looked at the words. A year ago, I would have panicked. I would have felt guilty. I would have called the neighbor to let them in. I would have apologized for ruining their day. But I read the text again, and I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was like reading about a stranger's problem in a newspaper. I did not reply. I did not delete the message. I opened the contact settings. I selected block caller. I put the phone down, face down on the table. "Who was it?" Mark asked, though I think he knew. "Nobody," I said. "Just a wrong number." Mark looked at me. He saw the steel in my eyes. He saw the woman who had risen from the ashes of his family's destruction. He leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Merry Christmas. Serenity. Merry Christmas, Mark." I picked up my mug of hot chocolate. I took a sip, letting the warmth spread through my chest. I looked out at the vast, indifferent mountains. They called me cruel. They called me cold. They said I had destroyed the family. But they were wrong. I had not destroyed the family. I had surgically removed the cancer that was killing it. I smiled, feeling the baby turn inside me. I realized then that kindness without boundaries is just self-destruction. And sometimes, the greatest act of love you can perform for yourself and your children is to be the villain in someone else's story. I took another sip, savoring the silence. This year, the best Christmas gift I gave myself was not the trip, or the peace, or the silence. It was the ruthlessness, and it was beautiful.